Thank you, Sixta. So I'm about to introduce the big of the entire summit. And the reason I wanted to come back on stage, even though at this point you don't want to hear from me anymore, I've talked enough and see what's happening there. This keynote is really, really, really special to me. And it's almost unbelievable that we were able to make it happen. I told you at the beginning of my story that I was born and raised in Costa Rica. My whole family lives in Costa Rica, and sometimes, I sometimes wish that I was still living there with them, even though I've been able to make this incredible life and career for myself here in the United States. I think that every Costa Rican who moves abroad feels like people don't know who we are or where we come from. There's ignorance around our little country, but it's a kind of just like my team. It is small, but very, very, very mighty. And in the 2016 election that I was following really closely and so excited, I had a little, I thought that we were going to have our first woman president here in the United States of America. And then that didn't happen. And I was just absolutely, and as were many of you, except, you know what the thing is, that I am a Costa Rican woman and I actually am president of my country in my lifetime. And when I think of what is the hardest thing, English, I think becoming president of a Latin American country is right up there with the absolute most important you could ever do. And I was lucky enough to meet President Laura Chinchilla Miranda through a friend, and she was kind enough to join us today for our keynote interview. And she's going to be interviewed with another incredibly special woman. Her name is Debi Nova. She is an internationally renowned Costa Rican pop star who was just nominated for a Grammy for, I think, Best Latin Artist. She's been nominated for Grammys a ton before. She has been all over the world music and collaborating with other huge artists like Ricky Martin and the Black Eyed Peas. And you guys have to follow her. She is incredibly talented and has a 5-week-old baby girl. And so she was kind enough to join us to interview President Chinchilla while being super underslept. And all of us here who've had babies know exactly what that feels like. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's keynotes who did the recording of scheduling conflicts. Please welcome La Presidenta Laura Chinchilla Miranda, interviewed by the pop artist and pop icon Debi Nova. Give them a round of applause.
Qué placer, Doña Laura. What a pleasure it is to be here with you, having a conversation. What an honor as a Costa Rican woman. I've just admired your journey so much, and really for all women, you are truly an inspiration, and we are very thankful that you are here with us and that you are giving us this space, and welcome. So I want to start by asking you if you always wanted to be the president of Costa Rica, and if so, why?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, David, that the pleasure and the honor is mine to be sharing this wonderful space with you. And thank you, of course, also to Leslie and all the women behind this wonderful initiative. When you ask me if I dream of being president of Costa Rica, my answer will be yes, but very late in my political career, not always. Because when I was born and during my childhood and early adulthood, it was just impossible to imagine women in certain kind of positions. There were no female head of states in the world, and in general, almost no women in leading positions. That is why it is so important when a woman breaks a glass ceiling, because from there, any other woman can dream of doing the same. For example, when people ask me what accomplishments I am most proud of, I respond that beyond the many positive outcomes resulting from some of our policies to decrease the crime rates, promote early childhood care programs, enhance women's empowerment, or protect our cis diversity, my major accomplishment was to break the glass ceilings in politics when becoming the Costa Rica's first female president after nearly 200 years of Republican life. And just to close this answer, let me tell you an anecdote so you can better ponder what I am saying. In Costa Rica, as you know, Debi, we organize children elections, which are held the same day of the adults' elections. We do this to teach our children the importance of democracy and to build a thriving civic culture. Well, as a candidate, I won the children's election by a wider margin than the adults' election. So that result stayed very close to my heart. Then I decided, very soon after winning, to visit some of the schools to greet and thank the children. When I arrived to some of those schools, the teachers gave me some beautiful news. The day after I was elected president, several girls announced that they will also run for president when they grow up. So at that moment, I became fully aware of the extent of my decision to run for president, to change forever my country's understanding of women's participation in politics.
That's so beautiful. It almost makes me want to cry because, and that was my next question about women in leading roles, which you've already answered. And I'm just going to say something really short. I visited our selección de fútbol, our soccer selection de sub-17, younger than 17 years old.
Right.
And I remember asking them, who's your role model? And they all answered Chili Cruz, which is, for you guys that don't know, she's a beloved and super successful soccer player from Costa Rica. And I thought to myself, wow, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, they wouldn't have had somebody to name. And that's what you did. You broke the glass ceiling. And that's why it's important to have women in leading roles. So I'm going to skip the next question and go to the next one and ask you, do you consider yourself to be ambitious? And has that changed throughout your life?
Well, that is not a very easy question, but I will say that yes, I have been ambitious. However, my greatest ambitions, the ones that have moved me forward, have been those of a social nature, and not necessarily those based on the individualistic perspective. For example, when what most influenced my decision to dedicate myself to public service was that when I turned 20 while in college, I decided to travel to our neighboring countries in Central America. I did it alone in buses as a backpacker. At that time, most of the North and Central American countries were suffering civil wars. And what I saw deeply hurt me and marked me forever. The brutality, the violence, and sadness I witnessed could never be forgotten. Hence, I decided that I would do everything I could to prevent our country from losing the political stability, the peace and democracy we enjoyed. That was my ambition. And the best way to achieve it was by getting involved in politics and public service. Ambitions related to helping to build a better country are the ones I tried to fulfill throughout my 25 years of public and political career. And just let me add something else, because I believe that there is nothing wrong with being ambitious, except if those ambitions are selfish or have to do with seeking personal gains at the expense of others. All human beings should have ambitions, but in pursuing this kind of personal success, they should also aspire to have a positive impact on the country where they live in, the community they belong to, or the group of people around it.
And I imagine that ambition alone, I mean, it's a very important ingredient in what we do, and I've experienced it in my life, but it's challenging to get to where you got. So what were those challenges? Because especially as a woman, to get to be a president of a Latin American country, I mean, that's just, it's wow, it's mind-blowing. So what are some of those challenges that you encountered?
I would say that probably not very different from the challenges that we all women experience every day. But concerning the personal experience, I would say that beyond the complexities that are inherent to politics, women face additional challenges, especially when they are the first to assume certain positions, as it was in my case. According to my experience, I would say that the most important challenge that we women face, and especially those aspiring to reach, again, leadership positions, is the negative role of social norms and stereotypes on female leaders. Those stereotypes are used against women to attack and debilitate them. Let me give you a couple of examples. During the presidential campaign, when I participated as a presidential candidate, my political opponents decided to present me in their political ads as a puppet whose strings were handled by males. Although I was the candidate with more experience in public service and with a political career forged over many years. But even after I won the elections, and I did it for a very large margin of votes, I realized that reaching the top was only the beginning of a bigger enterprise. Because for women to stay in leadership position is as hard as reaching them. During the whole constitutional period of my mandate, every day was a constant battle to contest those who kept wondering if, as a woman, I will be capable of resisting pressures, overcome complex crises, or taking informed and independent decisions. For instance, when a journalist asked me if I had been in the beauty salon getting my nails done because I disappeared from the public spotlight a couple of days to work with members of my cabinet in a new tax law. Or when others questioned whether I had done the household during the weekend or cried when any kind of tragedy happened in the country. These stories are not exclusive to me. I have shared with other female political and corporate leaders who confirm that they also face similarly discriminatory episodes. Just to finalize, let me emphasize this. Sexist views are reproduced every day around the world. More than any other legal, material, or physical barrier, social norms are the most complex obstacle to women's aspirations. This is why confronting prejudice through specific policies is a fundamental task in pursuing gender equality.
Absolutely. I mean, in music, it's incredible, the gender gap.
I imagine that.
Yes. I've had this conversations many times. And going back to ambition, like being an ambitious woman is not viewed the same as being an ambitious man. I mean, talk about stereotypes, you know? So you're very brave. And again, my admiration towards you is enormous. And what got you through those hard times? How did you overcome those challenges? What were those practices that you know made you go to your office the next day and the next day without sitting down and crying, which I sometimes do?
Well, there were some days, you know, I was feeling really tough. Yeah. But also the exercise of political power in general and the presidency in particular are very challenging experiences. There are also beautiful things, such as the opportunity to be able to positively impact people's lives and to transform circumstances, curtailing the well-being, prosperity, and safety of thousands of citizens. No matter how many difficulties you can encounter and how hard and complex a decision-making process can be, as President of the Republic, there is always the satisfaction of seeing the results of your team's actions and the impact and achievements of particular policies. In my case, the most important promise I made to my country was to improve public security, and I succeeded. We reduced the numbers of homicides and significantly reduced also the numbers of violent deaths of women or femicides. So there were many examples like this, where the results were sufficient as to continue moving forward. But I could give you, again, many different examples that I also want to mention. Another fundamental aspect that helped me continue going, and that was my family, especially my son and my dear husband, who is no longer with me since he passed away 2 years ago. They always supported me and gave me their unconditional love. So family or friends or that kind of emotional support, I think it is usually very important for us women.
And do you have any regrets?
To be sincere, I have no regrets of anything I have done in my life. While I have made mistakes throughout also my professional life, like everybody else, the intentions behind them were good. I mean, I tried to do my best. I have never done anything in conflict with the two most important principles guiding my actions, which are honesty and responsibility. If I had to go back, possibly I would do some things differently, but this doesn't mean that I regret what I have done or what I have lived. Having said this, one of the main mistakes we probably made in government, and which I will most certainly do differently in case of having the chance to travel back in time, is the way we communicate our actions and our intentions. Given the social stigmas prevailing over women, and particularly over women in power, our gestures and actions are often, or were often, misinterpreted and in very different manners from the way in which they are interpreted when men are in power. So it is very important for we women to understand the importance of communicating, trying to understand that although we are trying to do our best, sometimes because those social stigmas, people are just looking at us in a different manner. So that is an advice that I always give to women in certain kind of activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in music we call it know your audience. Like know your audience, and sometimes we have to find ways to go around and be smart about how we say, or how I communicate to a male record executive certain things. So absolutely, communication. And another thing you've said that I rescue a lot from what you've been sharing with us is intention. How to align with your deep intention, which when you were traveling through Central America, that's what inspired you. And I think having that deep intention and asking the why am I doing these things, is so important. Are there any other advice? Is there any other advice that you would give to young women that are in male-dominated fields besides communication and intention?
Well, there are many, of course, many advices based on my experience, but since we have a limited time here, I would just like to tell them, first, believe in yourselves, and secondly, never give up. And let me share a beautiful anecdote now that you mentioned your conversation with some of the soccer players here in Costa Rica, because this anecdote will help me to underline the two advices that I just gave. During my presidency, as you mentioned, or you bring this situation, I was very supportive of women athletes, because the same happens in your world, in the world of culture. For they, it's very hard to, for example, getting sponsorships, obtaining recognition, and getting people to actually go to women's sport competitions. So as part of the actions we took in this regard, we brought to Costa Rica a women's soccer World Cup. And from that moment, it was uphill all the way. It was very difficult to obtain the sponsorship, and almost everything in the organization had to face with great obstacles and challenges. However, when the matches started, people came to the stadiums, accompanied the girls, and people fell in love with the cup and truly enjoyed to watch the girls play. For the final match, a high-ranked official of the International Federation of Soccer came to Costa Rica. And I asked him, how does he accounted for the success we had with the cup? And he told me the following: Madam President, just pay attention to the way girls play soccer. It is very different from the way the men play, he said. Women fall to the grass, but do not stay there winning as men tend to do. So for me, it was a great lesson, because deep down, all women know we cannot afford staying there lamenting our difficulties or crying over our tragedies. We always have to draw strength from ourselves, stand up as soon as possible, and keep working and fighting for what we believe and for what we really dream.
That's amazing. I keep thinking, you all know, but those watching us, I have a 5-week-old baby, and there's been days when I'm like, oh my God, I am so tired. I can't get up. And I don't know, we have this strength that you can't not wake up. You have to get up and feed your baby and just like, breathe and keep going and keep fighting. So yes. I'm going to think of those soccer players next time when she wakes me up at night. I'm going to be like, I can do this. I can do this. That's so awesome.
That kind of strength is very much about being women. And that is wonderful. And we should feel very powerful because of that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have one more thing that I want to talk about. And since we're both from Costa Rica, I want to take this opportunity to talk about our country. I've lived outside of Costa Rica for the last 20 years. And every time I tell people that I'm from Costa Rica, I'm always met with a smile. It's really amazing. People love our country. And they know us for many things, mostly because we're a tourist destination. So they know us for our natural richness and our beauty. And I always offer the piece of information about our army, because not a lot of people know that we don't have an army. Yes. What are some of the things that you think the world could learn from Costa Rica?
Well, that is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it. I think that we Costa Ricans often define our country as a peaceful, democratic, and green. Peaceful, democratic, and green. That is probably our main characteristics. And let me tell you that it is a question that took a long time to be forged and embedded in what I call the Costa Rican Creed. More than 140 years ago, we legislated that primary education should be free and universal for all of the Costa Rican people. And that was before any other country in our hemisphere. And in 1940, we created a universal healthcare and social security system underpinned by values of solidarity, which explains why Costa Rica has achieved human development standards like those of the developed world. We have been also able to sustain these achievements because in 1948, as you mentioned, we decided to abolish the army. So we were unwilling to invest even 1 cent on the military when we could invest this money in building schools or hospitals. When we abolished the army, that is something also important about our history, Costa Rica was already an established democracy. Yet not a full democracy, but a democracy. So 2 democratic traditions after the abolition of the army have made my country or our country a singular case in Latin America. The first is the construction of a political system that has given voice and participation to multiple views and that had not given predominance to the military to settle public disputes as in other countries. And secondly, strong democratic institutions to channel social disagreement. So today we are the oldest non-interrupted democracy in our region. And finally, and this is very important because it has to do with the green aspect of our development, more than 50 years ago, well before the world grasped the risk of climate change, we took on the task of protecting our biodiversity. Today, we have almost 1/3 of our territory under some form of environmental protection regime. This decision, along with other policies, explains our green development model, which produces 100% of the electrical energy we consume from renewable sources. Most recently, during my government, we decided to ban some extractive industries such as oil, gas, and gold. So some people, and I about to finish, when you ask me these questions, I have the temptation to speak a lot, but just to finish, some people call the Costa Rican model, which embraces democracy, human development, and green development, a miracle. I prefer to call it a vision and the result of deliberate public policies and brave political decisions we have been able to take along our history.
Beautiful. Well, I'm a proud Costa Rican, especially having a Madam President such as yourself. And I appreciate your time so much. I feel so inspired by this little bit of time we've spent together. I want to thank Leslie and Divya and all the women supporting this beautiful summit. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I have really enjoyed this opportunity. And again, congratulations to you, Debi, for your wonderful achievements and for your newborn baby, Paloma.
Thank you. Gracias.
Congratulations also to the wonderful initiative Female Founders Alliance, because it is an example of what really gives us hope about the future of humanity. So thank you again for this invitation.